the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans in NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with you all on this Friday. Special guest for today's show, Coach Gibson Pyper. You can follow him on Twitter at HalfCourtHoops. It's also the high school coach of Trey Murphy III, your newest Pelican. So what a great way to kind of end the week. Coach, thanks for taking the time today to hop on with me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I was saying before we started recording, I love the shirt and I saw the pictures of you and Trey on draft night. Just so excited for him. I've seen the video, like you can see him just kind of like collapse in emotion when his name was announced. What was it like being there and just seeing this kid, realizing his dream?
Yeah, it was a really special moment. I never really have been around anything like that just because, I've had such a personal relationship with him, coached him in high school, but just to have everybody be there, be so like overwhelmingly excited for that moment. It was a truly joyous occasion. And it was just so much fun to see all his hard work and all his passion, come to fruition. Yeah,
that seems like one of the biggest things about him, right? Like the dude works incredibly hard, and I'm sure you can share, firsthand seeing all of that with him. And I know you did some of the pre-draft workouts with him as well.
Yeah, he I have so many stories that I could talk about, just his work ethic and his passion, because you probably heard his background by now, but he wasn't a crazy talented kid to start, and he wasn't 6'9". Like, he started off, when I first met him, he was 6'2", 155 pounds. I mean, like, just you're talking about an underdog story, because he had to work for everything. And that's been his mantra. He even going from high school, he went to Rice, and then he grew some more, then he went to Virginia, and now he's 6'9", and the player we all know today. And then, he came back and we were able to get in the gym, and it was really cool because the school we were at is an academic school. Like, it is the #1 school in North Carolina for academics. So there's not like a lot of basketball talent that comes to that school, typically speaking.
Right.
And so he was able to work his way from that to gain all this stuff that he has now. But we were able to go back to training at that same school before he left for all his, official pre-draft stuff. So, we were able to work together before he left for all his stuff. And it was just cool to see like the moments that we were able to share in the gym together from 5 years ago till now, and see the journey that he's been able to come on is really awesome.
How does having kind of one of those growth spurts and going from, 6'2" to whatever to 6'9" kind of change the way you train and the way he kind of plays? Because for some guys, this happens like almost overnight, it seems, right? Like, they've been a guard for a long time, and all of a sudden now you're playing in the front court. And I would assume the training's different, or kind of the preparation's different to a degree.
Yeah, I mean, the training pretty much for me stays the same. For my philosophy, to an extent. I mean, you work on the fundamentals, you work on the basics, and mastering those first, and then you kind of figure it out and fine tune for what you're looking for. So, like with Trey, the biggest thing was, how do we improve the weaknesses, but also focus on the strength? So in shooting drills, and maybe adding a little wrinkle at the beginning where you do a 2-ball handling drill with a weak hand pass, and then go into your shot, your reps, shot and reps, whatever you do. But for the most part, it's still the same, because he's going to be a guard in the league. Like, he may play forward, he may play the 4 at times, but like he's a guard. Like, he's one of the best shooters in the gym when he walks through the door. So you want to make sure you have those guard skills. And I mean, they're not going to post him up next year. So like, you got to know,
right, of course,
the strength. So, okay, well, look, we're just going to work on the same stuff. But when we first started, it was the ultimate footwork, like the most basic stuff you can do. But the biggest thing was IQ, because, he was 6'2", 155 pounds, best shooter in the gym wherever he went. But it's like, you're not going to go and out athlete these guys. You're not going to out, size them. So where's the advantage? It's the IQ. It's working on, the tricks and the little things that you have to do to improve because you don't have the physical attributes yet.
Gotcha. And he's grown a lot of those too, though. And so, by just kind of increasing in size, but, it kind of fits the MO of what the Pelicans really wanted to add. And one of the things they said more so, David Griffin laid out 3 things at the end of this past season in his media availability. He said, we want to add basketball IQ. And that was the first thing he said before shooting, which, Trey Murphy kind of adds that too, we can say pretty safely. But that basketball IQ part is so important when, you look at a team last year for this Pelican squad that looked out of sorts at times, was making these kind of mistakes, adding that high basketball IQ guy to the roster, and also a guy that's willing to put that time into the gym. I think that was somewhat lacking at times from this roster, and a guy who can kind of be in there, when teammates go in and see he's, first one in, last out, what have you, that kind of builds that culture that they're looking to try and achieve here, I think.
Yeah, I agree completely. And, the biggest thing is, the IQ, you can teach it, but you really have to work at it. And so, like these NBA coaches and guys, they're so smart and they work with these guys, but it just takes time. And if you can master it when, the younger you are, the better off you'll be, in 4 or 5 years. And Trey is very mature and very smart for his age. Like, he's one of the most accomplished young men that I've ever seen and coached. And everybody that on any recruiting trip, anywhere you go, anytime you talk to him, it's just people are blown away by, his maturity and just his focus and his clarity. It's truly special to have that in combination with the work ethic.
Look, and I think it's why the Pelicans had him so high on their draft board. He was one of the first guys, I believe, that they brought in for a workout, and someone they very clearly keyed in early on. And Trajan Langdon, the GM, said in his post-draft media availability, they had him higher on their board than 17. And I think if, they'd stayed at 10, they really would have considered drafting him that high. I think that's how highly they thought of him. Did you hear any of the stories or how the meeting went from the pre-draft availability and all of that?
No, I didn't talk to him anything about that specifically, but I knew the Pelicans called me probably 5 or 6 months ago, really before anybody really knew about him. One of their scouts contacted me and we talked about him early on before anybody else even really was talking about him being even a first round pick. They were thinking second round at that time. And gotcha. So I knew as soon as the trade happened from 10 to 17, I was like, he's going to Pelicans. I knew it. It made so much sense.
Yeah, no, I think we kind of all realized who they were targeting at that point, that they could trade down, get the guy that they really wanted, that they truly coveted him. I think they see him as a guy that can contribute maybe a little bit sooner than taking one of the freshmen at that time there. In the next segment coming up here, because we got to hit a quick break, let's talk about how you see him kind of adapting to the NBA and what he's going to be able to excel at right away, coming up here next on Locked On Pelicans. Okay, so coming back here with Coach Gibson Pyper at Half Court Hoops on Twitter, and please check out his YouTube page if you just want to get smarter about basketball in general. So we're talking Trey Murphy. You coached him, you've worked with him a lot. You've probably seen more of him than almost anyone else, maybe other than the Pelicans, I guess, given what we just talked about there. How do you see him translating to the NBA, and where do you see him excelling, right off of the bat, as this is a Pelicans team that's going to want to be competitive immediately next year to try and get back into the playoffs?
Yeah, the biggest thing is shooting. I mean, obviously, anybody who's done any draft research, he's one of, if not the best shooter in the draft class. And it's just that gets you on the. I think he even said in an interview that that gets you on the floor. And then can he defend, and what positions is going to be able to defend right away? From his size and his mobility aspect, I mean, he can defend 1 through 3 pretty easily. The physical post-up play aspect of the fours will get, maybe get him if you get a big, but the NBA doesn't play that game right now. So you're not too concerned about them trying to post up anybody, right now. Unless you're Kevin Durant, which in that case, what are you gonna do anyways? It's Kevin Durant.
It's just good looking. No one can defend him, right? It's totally okay.
Yeah, it's perfect. And so it's just about learning the NBA game early, and the biggest thing is figuring out where your help comes from, going from the Virginia pack line to the NBA. We talked a little bit about that when we worked out, and the differences of where the help will come from and things like that. But it's just more about shooting is going to keep him on the floor because, you're a 40% 3-point shooter throughout all college. He's been one of the best shooters I've ever seen. 6'9", like you don't teach that anywhere. Like there's not many 6'9" guys walking in shooting 40% from three. So he's going to be a great spot up shooter to start. I think you'll see him run some ball screens for Zion. He knows how to run a ball screen both with and without the ball. And what I learned, I guess, and this may help insight into some of the pre-draft process stuff when you're going through this. What I learned, because I know Trey so intimately, is I know and most people know nothing about these prospects we're evaluating besides what we're seeing on film or what information's kind of given to us. Like these teams know everything about all these people. They know all this stuff, but even then they're probably working with 60 to 70% of the true information, right? Because everybody's putting their best foot forward. They're showing who they really are, in terms of what they want you to see, and who they really are is completely different necessarily because a lot of knocks on Trey was like self-creation and stuff. And it's like, if you go to a Virginia practice, like he was telling me stories about Jay Huff shot like a step back pull up in one of their practices, and like the gym went completely silent and the coaching staff like chewed him out for it. Like that's just not Virginia basketball. It's not their way. It's not what they do. So like he doesn't take step backs. He doesn't take, his self-creation one-on-one game because that's what Virginia just doesn't do that. That's what, they have their system. That's what they do. And for the most part,
it's also why like his scoring at times might have looked a little bit low because of that offense that they ran. And it's not the most modern thing we've ever seen necessarily, but it didn't put him in a position for it. I get what you're saying.
Yeah. And he was used as a screener, right? Like he was in their mover blocker system. And even in some of their other stuff they run, he's a screener, right? So they used him as a pick and pop threat, as a screener, setting the screens, which is great because now he knows how to set screens and make those reads too, because he was never really used that way prior to Virginia. But what you see is, if you just looked at, like, if you pulled up a synergy profile of a player, that doesn't tell us pretty much anything. We're going to know what they are at the next level because they're playing what their college coach wants them to play. And he's trying to win at all costs to save his job, primarily number one, and then also win games number two. So, you'll see them in what I realize is all these draft prospects, we know half the information. Just like me, a guy watching film knows half of the information we're given. We're seeing what they're doing on film with no instruction, no background, no situational scenarios. Like we don't know what the coaches were telling them. So we just don't know. And that's why these mock drafts and all the boards get wonky because we just don't know most of that information.
Yeah, no, and you saw that this year where I think mock drafts went out the window after the fourth overall pick.
After Barnes and Giddey went, it was gone.
It's a little bit different. We had a show with Chad Ford, who's one of the best at these mock drafts and doing all of that. He got something like 6 of the picks exactly right in the first round, and that was it. And that felt like high this year.
I think he was the highest one.
It was. Yeah, it's like one of them. Although I think, we could tell, as we were saying, it seemed like Trey Murphy to the Pelicans at 17 seemed to make a lot of sense. You talk about the lack of self-creation because he didn't have to do that. And it's something maybe he can learn and do at the NBA level. But he also doesn't need to, right? He's coming to a team with Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram. As you said, the shooting's going to keep him on the floor. If he knocks down his threes when Point Zion is rolling, that's a huge upgrade for New Orleans. We mentioned they really wanted to add basketball IQ, but look, they needed so much more shooting on of this team. And as you said, he was one of, if not the best shooter in the draft. And to get him at 17 with his release, which is incredibly quick, very consistent every single time. What they need him to be out there on the court to do is make teams pay. Other players on the Pelicans got shots when Zion would get double, triple, quadruple teamed at the rim to try and wall him off. He kicks it out, and the Pelicans weren't converting, and it just didn't make teams pay. If Trey Murphy can make teams pay, there's a valuable role for him, especially in the regular season, I think.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing is just him being able to just be a threat, even though like teams may not necessarily recognize it right away. Like he won't be at the top of the scouting reports and things like that. But all of a sudden he makes one and in your head as a defender, you're going, I got to shade towards him just one more step. I can't let him get 2 in a row. Like the coaching staff will probably say, hey, don't let him get hot. Don't let him get 2 or 3 in a row. Maybe make him beat us early on. Yeah, sure. But eventually, like you'll see a game probably where he's going to hit 5 or 6 threes in the first half because teams are going to be sagging so much on Zion and really trying to clog that paint up. And even against Ingram too, when you're running a ball screen, bringing in an extra shooter just spaces that floor that much more. Now, that's all these NBA guys need. They just need an extra feet or two. Like, they don't need anything crazy to create a lot of space. So, and it's actually, we watched I sent him a bunch of Brandon Ingram tape about like 5 or 6 months ago too, just a study for him to get better. So it's like perfect. So he's watched Brandon Ingram pick and roll film for the last 6 months.
No, I love hearing that. And also, it seemed like he was genuinely excited to be drafted by New Orleans and to end up here. And for a franchise that hasn't always had players want to be here necessarily, it's nice to get a guy that looked genuinely excited in that moment. And that's something that's just going to like completely endear him to fans here in the Crescent City. But beyond the shooting, you mentioned this, right? He can guard 1 through 3. Defense is an area that New Orleans really needs to step up their game. And we saw in the playoffs too, right? Guys that are just shooters that don't have it on the defensive side of the ball, it's tough to give them minutes at times. Like Luke Kennard couldn't get on the court in some of those series. Bryn Forbes for the Bucks really couldn't get onto the court much for significant minutes. But he has that, right? Like, looking at a lot of the film of him, the way he navigates screens on the defensive side of the ball, I thought was pretty impressive. And New Orleans doesn't have a guy that can do that. And you see him kind of work almost to shut down like the opponent's best shooters at times, because he can navigate all of those ways they're trying to spring those guys open, it seemed like.
Yeah, and one of the things that even if he doesn't get it right away, because the NBA game, is definitely going to be different and stuff, just the learning process of it, he has length that can make up for some mistakes. And I think that's really important. Like, his 7-foot wingspan with a basketball IQ, like, you can make up for if you're in the wrong spot for a second. Like, we see that with Team USA right now. Like, Team USA makes some pretty bad mistakes on defense just playing with a new group, but they have Levine and Tatum and Bam, and guys' arms are everywhere. Like, KD's arms are just everywhere because they have that length, and that athleticism makes up for a lot of those mistakes. So I think combined basketball IQ with length is going to keep him engaged on the defensive end from the start. And then once he starts figuring out as time comes along, because all rookies, they go through a bunch of weird stuff.
Look, it takes them a while to kind of acclimate. Yeah. It takes rookies a long time, a year or two to just kind of get it on the defensive side of the ball, right? It's a very different kind of game. And if he struggles on that side of the ball, it's why I don't really knock Zion a ton on the defensive side of the ball, because it's tough to get it and to kind of make that leap.
Yeah, exactly. And so, it'll come with time, but I think, the length athleticism will make up for a lot of those mistakes and a lot of those scenarios where maybe he's in the wrong spot, but he can, recover and contest or, get back.
Yeah, no, and I think the Pelicans think he projects on that side of the ball very, very highly, and that's an area that they're really trying to target. So continuing the conversation here with Coach Gibson Pyper at Half Court Hoops, we're going to get into a little bit more about Trey Murphy III, your newest Pelican. But before we do that, today's episode of Locked On Pelicans brought to you by Built Bar. You know that Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar out there, and they have so many delicious flavors. There's something for everyone. It's basically a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. I love the mint brownie, the double chocolate, the salted caramel that has this consistency that's not chalky, it's not dry. It's like nothing you've ever had. And if you haven't tried all of the flavors, you can get a mix box where you're going to get 2 of each of the 9 different flavors. And look, they're good for you. Not only are they the best tasting, but they're better for you than most other protein bars out there on the market. 17 to 18 grams of protein, calories between 130 and 180, so you're not wasting all that cardio you just did. Only 4 to 5 grams sugar, only 4 to 5 grams net carbs. They're all amazing. They're all tasty. And Built Bar is the official protein bar of the U.S. track and field team. So go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, and you're going to get 15% off your next order. That is promo code LOCKED15 over at built.com. All right, continuing the conversation here with at Half Court Hoops, Coach Gibson Pyper. So first, tell everyone about the YouTube channel that you use, because if you want to learn more about the X's and O's of basketball, there's only so much I can do here, but like YouTube videos where you're kind of breaking down the plays is such a huge resource for people out there.
Well, thank you. First of all, that's kind of you to say. Basically, I started probably 2013 as a young coach and was kind of looking for a resource to learn X's and O's and just watch like video breakdowns and more of, not for entertainment purposes, more for like, here's why this happened. Here's what coaches expect. Here's, what's going on behind the scenes and some terms and just improving as a coach. That's kind of my whole journey is how do I get better every day as a coach? and so I found a couple of that I liked, but nothing really that I was able to watch consistently. Like they weren't like putting out great content all the time or breaking it down or telling you why it happened. And so I was like, well, I'll just start my own. Like I'll just figure it out. And so I started it, and had no idea what I was doing to start. Still figuring out some things. I've gone to more long form breakdowns where I like to do like hour and a half long breakdowns on the Bucks offense or, whatever we're looking at. And those take a lot of time, but it's a lot of fun because I get to learn a lot more in depth about these teams. Really, like I knew everything the Suns and Bucks were going to do in the finals. Like there wasn't anything that surprised me because I'd covered them so in depth. So just basically trying to shine a light on the X's and O's. And I have a Coach's Cut newsletter that goes out with it through email. So you get more in depth because YouTube blocks if you put too much stuff in it, they block the video, which is it's just great. It's just a lot of fun to navigate that process. And so some stuff that I can't always put in there, I'll put in the Coach's Cut, for paid subscribers or do like an extra breakdown. I do a lot of more in-depth stuff on there. That's easier to I guess, get out there than it is to do like a full YouTube video on it. But yeah, it's basically just trying to take the X's and O's and digest them of what a coach sees and then go from there. I tried, and I can't do anything with the Olympics right now because they hate fun and they'll block and DMCA your content as soon as you put it out. So there you go.
And also made it pretty hard just to watch in general too.
Oh my gosh. I'm not even gonna get started on that. I just have 2 bookmarks and that's all I needed. And I just kept it at that, but it's just for basketball. If you're looking for gymnastics, like my wife's watching on YouTube TV and we're like, all right, we'll go through these 30 links and try to figure out when it starts. It's a nightmare.
No, it hasn't been easy to be able to track all of that, and it's a shame because it's been really fun to watch so far. So continuing to talk about Trey Murphy here in New Orleans, having worked with him, he hasn't been officially announced on the Summer League team, but as soon as all of these trades go through, we'll see that announced and he'll get in there, and hopefully this doesn't delay any time that he's going to get with the Pelicans having a game on Monday. When you start to look at these guys making their first appearances in Summer League, is there anything you're looking for him to try and do? Is there anything you want to kind of see or any expectations that you have?
No, I'm probably the
that's a good way to describe it though.
Yeah, I'm just the least interested in Summer League as just watch it and enjoy it, right? Like you want to see glimpses, see flashes. And I mean, but like even the first season, you don't really worry too much about because weird things like look at Trae Young. Like everybody crushed Trae Young the first season, like Summer League. Remember he like airballed and had Ofer, like they crushed him, worst pick ever, and it's just like, it takes time to figure it out, man. Like it's not an easy process. It's everything's brand new. And so it just, you want to look for, is he having fun? That's all I really look for to start. Like, is he enjoying himself? That's a good way to
describe it.
Yeah, and then you just see if he's smiling on the court, I know that we're good, and he puts a lot of pressure on himself, and his dad and his mom both do as well. So I'm like the fun guy where I get to come in and kind of make fun of him a little bit and have a good laugh and give him advice, but pretty much just enjoy the moment and the process. Because honestly, like, do you remember who won last year's Summer League?
No clue.
Yeah, me neither. So that kind of just explains the seriousness of it for me, at least. I'm sure some people put a stock in it.
No, I appreciate that because you would not believe the amount of people I get like in my mentions on Twitter being like, oh, it's huge when these guys get a full Summer League. And I'm like, it's nice. I don't know if it's necessarily like huge for their development. Like everyone's excited to see Kyra Lewis Jr. in it. And I'm like, I don't think it's going to matter that much. Like if you're a top 20 pick here and you struggle in Summer League, it doesn't mean you're going to be out of the league, and you should be good, but also it's just everyone's kind of different. And sometimes people take a little bit to adjust. And I like your attitude of like, are they having fun out there? Is he enjoying playing basketball? Is he kind of taking to his teammates, enjoying this whole experience? That's important. You don't want to be miserable out there on the court.
Yeah. And I mean, ultimately for me, it's just like, it's a good way to get your feet wet. You get used to some of the teammates you may be playing with. You get used to, this year, Willie Green coaching it, right? So you get used to,
he's going to be coaching the whole thing. Yep.
Yeah. So that's not normal necessarily. You get used to maybe the head coach's voice, you'll get maybe a better relationship with him, some team bonding stuff, and you take away the positives and hopefully don't focus on the negatives. But I mean, I also think when you're in a situation, I'm a Cavs fan, right? So like, okay, when you're not very good at basketball and your team isn't very good at basketball every year, you put more stock into things that maybe wouldn't matter to the Warriors or the Lakers fans as much, right?
Oh, trust me. Look at the Pelicans in free agency and everyone being like, oh, we've got to make, it was like, we need Norm Powell on this team. And it's a nice player, but like, that's not going to make or break a season probably. And if we're doing that, things are not going well here in New Orleans. So yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah, so it's just more about the pressure that you put on yourself, I think, as a fan, where like you just have not a lot else to cling to at the time. So you're just kind of like looking for any sort of encouraging sign or even something to talk about. Be like, maybe Kira Lewis has a great look at him. He had a great summer league. Oh my gosh. Like, so it's just you get your own head a little
kind
bit.
Of build the hope up.
Yeah.
Look,
and that's fair. That's fine.
This is for all my listeners when I don't care too much about summer league performances to not get mad at me and say I'm not watching or anything like that. I got someone backing me up on this here.
Oh yeah,
I'll now because there we go. At 2:00 on Monday, I'm going to be working instead of watching the game, and I'm not going to like take time off for all of that. But going back to Trey, so no expectations on summer league. Do you have any for him, maybe for the regular season and, his first couple, the first period of time? I get it. We don't want to set expectations too high and set him up for failure. But what are you looking for him to either work on, to develop over time? And I know a lot of that's going to come from the Pelicans coaching staff and the front office too. But if you were to look at his game right now, what are some of the areas you'd like to see him kind of slowly start to improve upon and really work upon over, say, the next couple of seasons?
Yeah, I think the main thing is just decision making with the ball. Because like you're gonna have like how I look at it is first season shooter, like spot up shooter, sniper, can't help, maybe ball screener, good IQ offensive player, very solid, balanced defensive player. So that's kind of like what we all expect, right? That's what he's supposed to come in as. And then going forward, what's your decision-making process after you get the ball or you're in the playoffs, all right, round one against the Lakers? What's your decision-making process when you can't get your shot right away? Like, are you attacking the closeout? And then what's your decision-making process after that? So just the simple things of, you're not expecting anything crazy. Like, you're not going to expect him to be taking guys one-on-one ISO making step backs. Like, that's just not going to be feasible. So it's just, all right, can we improve the ball handling? Can we attack closeouts? Can we, maybe make a play in the decision-making process on a drive? And then defensively, like, are we wreaking havoc as a defender? Are we slowly improving in year 2 and 3 where it's like on the weak side help, like, guys aren't going to even try you because they know you'll be in the right position. You'll be able to contain, contest, and then close out. And you're always in the right position. You're communicating on defense. You're starting more of like a leadership role in terms of like your on court, play and your off court demonstration. You're in the community, you're making an impact, which is all the things I expect him to do. But that's kind of what I would see, those incremental progress bars where I just check, okay, he attacked the closeout. He made the wrong decision last game on this pull-up. Maybe next game he goes all the way to the rim. He baseline drifts it. Whatever the next read or decision process is that an incremental improvement? Like you look at LaMelo Ball. I'm doing a lot of study on him right now. From his first game this season till the last game of the season, I did with Ja Morant. And you just look at, it's a slow grind. It's a slow process to where you're just slowly getting better. It's going to be from game 1 to game 20. You make that read adjustment. It takes you 20 games, because that scenario may not come up again. So it's just a slow process of, is everything developing on plan? Are we making the right decisions? Is the coaching staff, are you doing what the coaching staff wants you to do? You're not going to, be out of your comfort zone, just things like that where, when people see you open, are they going to be willing to pass you the ball? Like, that's a big part of it. Like, so like
that's a good thing, right? Like, yeah.
And they're like, I'm not giving it to him. I'm not getting it back. Like that's part of being a teammate. It's part of being a great player is I want him to have the ball in this scenario. Like when Brandon Ingram gets trapped late in the game and he's open in the corner, is the ball going to him? Like, do they have that trust yet? And when will that come? Things like that where, it may not be 15 points a night on a box score, but it's going to be things that really matter to winning. Like those just matter.
No, and that's what the Pelicans want, and I know Pelicans fans want too, because I think everyone's desperate to get this team back into the playoffs and to see them have some success, and building around Zion B.I. and now, Trey Murphy, who's going to be part of this core. And I know, again, the Pelicans been so high on him. Everyone's really excited. So, Coach, I appreciate you taking the time to chat about him with me today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, and everyone, please go follow him on Twitter. It's at HalfCourtHoops. And that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Pelicans, this week of Locked On Pelicans. So thank you all for listening. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. And I'll be back with you all on Monday.